Hello, and welcome back to Miss History. I'm Rhonda, and this is where I talk about odd or unsolved historical mysteries. And if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, then please consider subscribing. I know, I was gone for a while. But my best friend came to visit. I don't know if you all saw the video. We did a video over on the baking series. And then I got a little stomach bug thing that was going on. I don't know. Whatever. Enough about that. That's not why you're here. I was looking for something to talk about this week, and I stumbled across this story, and it came across like one part of it that made me go, what? Why? Who does that? And so I was like, okay, so this is the story that I have to tell. So, what happened to the Gruber family at Hinterkaifeck Farm? So this case dates back to April 4th, 1922 in Kaifeck, Germany, which is modern-day Weidhofen, Bavaria. It was here where the bodies of the Gruber family would be discovered by their neighbors. In a barn, stacked up and covered by some hay, were the bodies of Father Andreas Gruber, 63, his wife Cecilia, 72, their widowed daughter Victoria, 35, and their granddaughter, young Cecilia, age 7. One of the neighbors would go into the home where he would find the bodies of maid Maria, age 44, and the 2-year-old son of Victoria. All of the victims died as a result of blunt force trauma to the head. Someone had murdered the entire family. But who? And why? The farm was located roughly 43 miles north of Munich, Germany, and was said to have been built in 1863. And it was here where Andreas Gruber lived with his family, as I mentioned, his wife Cecilia, daughter Victoria, and Victoria's 2 young children. In April of 1914, Victoria would marry a man by the name of Carl Gabriel. Remember that name. They would not be married long before he would leave to go serve in the First World War. He was killed in battle. This would leave Victoria a pregnant widow. Victoria's daughter would be born in 1915 and named after Victoria's own mother, Cecilia. In the months leading up to the murders, there were some strange events that were happening at the farmstead. A maid that had previously worked for the Gruber family claimed that the farm was haunted. During the investigation that would follow the discovery of the bodies, investigators would ask her why she thought it was haunted, and she would tell them that she would hear footsteps in the attic and that she felt like she was being watched all the time. And I guess she would go to Andreas with this information and go, dude, I think your farm is haunted. And he kind of dismissed her claims, and she was spooked by it all, so she quit. I guess I don't blame her. Andreas himself would report to neighbors that he had seen his own strange things going on. And this was in the days leading up to the murders. He reported seeing footprints in the snow that were coming from the wooded area surrounding the farmstead that led to the home, but no footsteps leading away from the home. He also noted that of the 2 sets of keys that they had for the farm, 1 set went missing. And he found a newspaper in the house that he didn't remember buying, and he thought maybe the postman had inadvertently left this newspaper there and somebody in the home read it, but it turns out none of his neighbors subscribed to that particular Munich, Germany newspaper. His neighbors would offer him a firearm to protect himself and his family, but he would refuse, which would end up proving fatal. The family hired a new maid in Maria. She was set to start her first day on March 31st, 1922. How unfortunate. On that day, Maria would arrive at the farmstead accompanied by her sister. Her sister would stay a visit for a little while, and then she would return to her own home. She had no way of knowing that she would be one of the last people to see the Gruber family alive. So from what I gathered in the various articles that I had read about this, the Gruber family was said to have a reputation for keeping to themselves. People would, however, notice the absence of young Cecilia from school on April 1st, as well as the family's absence from church. When Cecilia did not attend school again that Monday, people really began to take notice and think that perhaps there was something wrong. There was even a man that was hired to repair one of the machines at the family farm. And he would go there. Nobody answered the door when he knocked. He waited around for an hour and then decided to go ahead and do the repair himself, which took him roughly 4.5 hours. But he would repair the machine, and then he would go ahead and he would leave. And the postman would notice that the mail had been kind of piling up since he had last been there on the 31st of March. So all of this is going on. And one of their neighbors, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a farmer and one-time love interest to Victoria, would gather a couple of other neighbors, and they would go to the Hinterkaifeck farmstead just to do like a wellness check. They noticed that all the doors to the home were locked, but there was a door to the machine room that led to the barn that it was unlocked. It was slightly open, so they went to investigate it. They would enter the barn, and they came into a different area, and it was here where the men would find the first 4 bodies covered in hay. If you are sensitive to photos and descriptions of violence, please feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter in the video. In the barn, Lorenz and the other neighbors would find the bodies of Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and young Cecilia. All of them had suffered blows to the head, and there were actually signs that the older Cecilia had been strangled as well. Andreas was described as having blood caked all over his face, with his cheekbones sticking out through the flesh. Ew. Victoria had her skull shattered, and her daughter, the young Cecilia, was described as having a shattered jaw, along with slashing wounds across her face and her neck. A hallway connected the barn to the house, so Lorenz would venture to the home himself, where he would find the bodies of Maria and Joseph. Both of them had been bludgeoned to death about the head. Joseph, in his mother's room in his bassinet, had been beaten to death and then covered with blankets. Maria was in her own bed, also beaten to death and then covered up with a dress. It was believed that the Gruber family died instantly, with the exception of 7-year-old Cecilia. At autopsy, it was revealed that the child had lived possibly for several hours after the murders took place. Examiners would find clumps of her own hair in her hands that she had pulled out herself, likely due to the distress of being surrounded by the bodies of her dead mother and grandparents. She was believed to have actually finally just died of shock. The men who discovered the bodies would also note that the family's dog and livestock seemed to have been taken care of. There were reports They had been fed, and the cows had even been milked since the deaths of the family. So, March 31st, April 4th, and somewhere in between there, the family was killed, and somebody was taking care of the dog and the livestock. The news of the deaths would travel fast, and other neighbors would come to the farm. And it was reported that they walked around the farm, and they would poke the bodies. You know, like, why? Who does that? Remember when I said at the beginning, I stumbled across something in the story that made me go, but what the heck? Who does that? Yeah, this is it. They're wandering around, trampling all this crime scene up, poking at the bodies. Like, I don't know. What were they thinking? You know, hey, you still alive? I don't know. They're covered in blood. They're probably not. Who does that? Don't do that. Just make a mental note. If you see a dead body, just go contact the police. Don't go poke it. Don't go trampling around everything. You're going to contaminate the crime scene. Which, oh yeah, that's what they did. They just in general contaminated the crime scene. Excellent. The Munich police were eventually notified of the family's demise out there at Hinterkaifeck Farms, and they would begin an investigation. They believed the family had been lured to the barn and killed one by one. During the autopsy, it was determined that the weapon used to kill the family was a mattock, or a pickaxe. The heads of the victims would be removed and sent to Munich for further testing. And so the family was buried without their heads. And it was believed that the family had been killed sometime on March 31st, 1922. And in the days in between the deaths and the discovery, neighbors would report that they saw smoke coming from the chimney of the house. There was also evidence that someone had prepared food in the home after the deaths of the family. So someone killed the 6 members of this family and then hung out at their farm and ate their food and took care of their livestock and their dog. Weird. So initially, the police thought that it was robbery gone wrong. But this theory was pretty quickly dismissed when they found large sums of cash laying around the house. They would consider traveling salesmen or other vagrants in and out of the area, but apparently nothing came of that either. So over the years, there have been several suspects. The top 2 were Carl Gabriel. That's right. The husband of Victoria. The guy that I stated earlier was killed in World War I. He was killed in Arras, France in December of 1914. And it was said that his body was never recovered. And so, maybe he didn't really die. And after the Second World War, soldiers who were captured in the Schrabenhausen region claimed that a German-speaking Soviet officer would claim to be the one who murdered the family. And the theory is that this Soviet officer was really Carl Gabriel, because according to some people who saw him after his supposed death in 1914, Carl said that he always had wanted to go to Russia. Maybe it was his ghost. The other top suspect was Lorenz, the one-time love interest to Victoria and the alleged father to her son, Joseph. According to one source I read, he let himself into the house via a key. Remember the other one went missing? Now this is other people got, well, he just let himself in the house. There's no proof that anybody was let into the house with a key, but I don't know. That's what they said. They said that he let himself into the house with a key. Other reports said that he followed the hallway from the barn to the house. So, I don't know. he ended up in the house, and he ended up in there alone. He would actually remain under suspicion for the murder of the Gruber family for many, many years, because apparently he made some strange comments about the murders that only the killer would know. Like, the killer was trying to bury them in the ground, but it was too cold. Which is very possible. I mean, it was April in the 1900s in Germany. I think it's still wintry there, to where the ground could still be kind of maybe frozen a little bit and too hard to dig. And so, maybe it's possible that since he was a farmer in the same area, he just kind of knew how it worked. Just saying. Eventually, before his death, though, in 1941, he won several civil court claims for slander against people who would go out and describe him as the murderer of Hinterkaifeck. So now, for the icky rumor to this story, it's icky. It's pretty gross. Rumor? It was believed that Andreas and his daughter, Victoria, were involved in an incestuous affair. Like, ew. Ugh. This had been a rumor for quite some time, even leading to the story that Victoria's husband, Carl, who did end up going to his own family farm before going off to serve in World War I. The real reason that he left and went to his family's place before the war was due to his knowledge of the affair that his new bride and her father were having, which called into question paternity for her daughter, Cecilia. A complaint would be filed against Andreas and Victoria sometime in 1914 or 1915, meaning that Victoria was either pregnant with her daughter or had just given birth to her daughter. Victoria insisted that Carl was the father of her daughter, but it was suggested that he questioned that. The courts would find the two guilty of their inappropriate relationship and sentence them to 1 year in prison. So, according to one story, they both served a year in prison, and according to another story, Andreas spent a year in prison and Victoria only spent 1 month in jail. Regardless, they were found guilty of having an incestuous relationship, and they would serve time for it. And this will now bring into question the paternity of Joseph. Victoria would claim that it was Lorenz who was the father of Joseph, the man who discovered the bodies that she had been involved with prior to her death. Initially, it was reported that Victoria wanted to marry him, and he was open to that, but when she informed him that she was pregnant, he doubted that the child was his due to his knowledge of the relationship between her and her father. Lorenz would file his own complaint against the two for incestuous relations sometime in 1918, but was said to have dropped that complaint after Victoria came to him crying and pleading with him to accept fatherhood for young Joseph. In the end, he would drop his complaint and would refer to Joseph as my boy. The farmstead would be razed a year after the murders, and a memorial was put up in its place. At the time of demolition, a pickaxe was found having been hidden away. That's the believed pickaxe that was used to murder the family. And remember when I said the skulls were removed from their bodies for further testing? Well, okay. They were removed during autopsy. They were sent off to Munich, where they stayed pending further investigation. There's also rumors that the skulls were given to clairvoyants in an attempt to learn more about the murderer. But the family is still buried without their heads because at some point during the chaos that was World War II, the skulls were lost and never recovered. Excellent. Well done. The case originally was closed in 1955 after exhausting all leads, having no one ever be charged. However, in 2007, a police academy in Germany took on the coldest of cold cases using modern techniques to investigate. They were able to go through lists and everything, evidence of hundreds of suspects, and eliminate all but one. That suspect, according to them, is deceased, and per some of the reports that I read about it, they will not release the name of the suspect out of respect for the surviving family members. So I guess we don't ever get to know who killed the Gruber family to protect the suspect's family. What? So have you ever heard of this case? Know anything about it? Who do you think did it? Was the ghost of her husband? Was it her lover? There was one speculation that even Andreas had killed his whole entire family and then killed himself, although I don't know how he was going to, beat them all with a pickaxe and then beat himself with a pickaxe and then hide the pickaxe and then cover them all up in straw. I mean, I guess stranger things have happened, but no, I don't see it. It's like, no, probably not. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, stay safe out there. But watch out for strangers with pickaxes. Bye.